Rick and Morty is back for season 9, baby! And it's bringing us some brand new Evil Morty lore that actually delves deeper into the love and admiration he feels towards Rick C-137. Plus, I think the seeds are being planted for an arc that will culminate in the recently announced Rick and Morty movie. You're watching WhitneyVision, and this is our breakdown of There's Something About Morty. This is your spoiler warning! If you haven't seen season 9, episode 1 of Rick and Morty yet, hit pause on this video or spend eternity in time prison. This week's WhitneyVision video is sponsored by Arsenal Comics and Games, and our pick of the week is Lost Fantasy number 9, the latest issue of the Lost Fantasy series written by Kurt Pyers and Luca Casalanguida. You'll definitely want to pick up this issue at your local comic book shop because it features an all-new character named Bombshell, written by Timmy Heeg. I'm so excited for you guys to get to know this character. I don't want to give too much away, but there's nothing that I love more than a hot babe kicking Nazi dinosaur ass. Rick and Morty aren't the only guys struggling to stay alive in a dimension beneath the world that they know. So is Henry Blackheart, the protagonist of the Lost Fantasy comic series. So if you're looking for your next interdimensional adventure, this is the story for you. Lost Fantasy tells the tale of the realm that lies beneath the world we live in, and the heroes who strive to protect it from the monsters that threaten to crawl their way to the surface. But it's not all monster battles and sick magic action, although trust me, there's a ton of that stuff in here too. Lies, family secrets, and mysterious side quests drive the story, keeping you on your toes with tons of twists that you'll never see coming. Order Lost Fantasy number 9 wherever comics are sold, or head on down to Arsenal Comics and Games in Southern California the next time your portal gun takes you there. This week's episode title, There's Something About Morty, is a parody of the 1998 rom-com There's Something About Mary, a movie where Ben Stiller gets his dick stuck in his pants, and Cameron Diaz gets jizz in her hair. The 1900s were certainly a time to be alive. Before we talk about the ep, we gotta discuss the new intro for Season 9. First up, we get a glimpse of a D&D board with the Smiths waging battle against a Beholder, one of D&D's iconic monsters. Here, Morty is a barbarian, Summer is an elven ranger, Jerry is a bard, and Beth seems to be the DM rolling a critical failure. Showrunner Dan Harmon has a long history with TTRPG media, from his acclaimed community episodes to his D&D podcast Harmon Quest, to the official Rick and Morty D&D crossover comics and rulebook. Interestingly, Summers is the only one that somewhat lines up with a character she plays in the comic crossover series, Ari Strongbow, a half-elf fighter who wields a longbow in battle. Next, we see a series of mostly water-based adventures. Rick and Morty having a grandfather-grandson fishing trip, Rick propelling the family in a giant ratty boot across the sea, and Rick, Morty, and Summer participating in a swim meet for Team Earth. I don't know who that guy is though. Most swimmers opt to wax max for high speed, low drag. We also see Beth and Jerry as tubby unicorns, which they no doubt will make a plush out of to sell at Hot Topic by the end of the month. This season opens up easy and breezy, revealing that the Smiths have installed a new swimming pool in their backyard. As beautiful as it is, you can still see the faint outline of the graves the family dug when they first moved into the Parmesian dimension at the start of season 6. Morty walks into the garage gulping down a 7-Eleven Slurpee to find his grandpa working on a self-cooling beer, using a can of foamies, a recurring beer brand we've seen before in a Morty King Grickviti, No Mortland, and Hot Rick. Morty asks Rick who he's texting, and when Rick gets all weird and cagey about it, Morty tussles with him in order to read the messages. For a second there, I was pretty certain this was gonna be Bug Ann, his love interest from last season, who ghosted him after he technically forfeited a duel for her heart. Instead, Morty finds that his grandpa is consorting with none other than Evil Morty. You know, the guy who told them to F off and never bother him ever again for any reason back in season 7. It turns out that he's been blackmailing Rick in order to force him to go on adventures behind Morty's back. If Rick ignores him or refuses to hang out with him, he'll use the Omega device to wipe out every version of the Smith family in existence, just like Rick Prime did to Slow Mobius back in season 7. His 180 attitude shift towards spending time with Rick C-137 is honestly a little surprising, because like I said a second ago, this dude formerly used the Omega device as a way to keep every other multiversal version of Rick's and Morty's away from his oasis on the other side of the central finite curve. In fact, his entire arc thus far has been his belief that he's better off alone in the vast expanse of the universe than he is interacting with lesser versions of his family members. So why the sudden goal change? I'll dive a little deeper into Evil Morty's relationship with Rick C-137 later on in this video, but for now let's get back to the episode. Rick compares Evil Morty to Q from Star Trek, a nearly omnipotent godlike being who often uses his immense powers to play Machiavellian tricks on people for his own amusement. In Evil Morty's lair, he has versions versions of the Smith family from an ideal hostage dimension, where they're all super easy to manipulate and never have to poop, making kidnapping them a mess-free breeze. I don't know about you, but I can think of countless scenes where a hostage needing to use a restroom has foiled a villain's plans, so Evil Morty's plan to capture these doe-eyed freaks is a bit brilliant. They're suspended over the Omega device, and Evil Morty uses a series of small screens to prove that he's able to nuke every single one of them from reality. We see Rick holding a beaker and burping, Doofus Rick from Season 1's Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind, Supreme Guard Rick from Season 4's Never Rick and Morty, Summer with a luxurious beard, Cyclops Summer, Cyborg Summer from the Season 3 intro, Beth lounging by the pool from the beginning of this episode, the 5 o'clock Shadow Dimension family, including Paul Fleischman, Beth's alternate reality husband from Season 8's No More Land, Hellraiser Beth from Season 5's A Morty King Graffiti, Jerry trapped in a glass on the counter, and Gazelle Jerry from Season 3's The Whirly Durly Conspiracy. There's also a Jerry getting attacked by a swarm of bees, likely a mishap from his beekeeping hobby. This one might be a lost cause though, since the last Jerry to get stung died back in full meta Jack Rick. While Morty fumes with jealousy about Rick and his shitty counterpart hanging out all the time, Evil Morty explains that there's a guy called the Collective hell-bent on eating the multiverse, and that they need to stop him before he reaches the central finite curve. Marvel fans will recognize that the Collective looks and acts a lot like Galactus, the gigantic world devourer who seeks to fill his insatiable hunger with the life force of entire planets. The Collective also seems to take inspiration from other entities in Marvel's cosmic stable, including the multi-faced living tribunal and the Phalanx, an artificial intelligence that conquers worlds by infecting inhabitants with the techno-organic virus. The Phalanx is basically Marvel's version of Star Trek's Borg, and is most notably associated with the X-Men Cable and Warlock, who share similar design elements with the Collective's tech. This hive mind is fittingly voiced by androgynous star Tilda Swinton, and their design also features a ton of symbolism drawn from Hindu spiritualism. Their throne is a giant lotus flower, which represents resilience and spiritual enlightenment. Great qualities for a collective consciousness that seeks to assimilate all life to its own beliefs at any cost. When we see their full body, the Collective has multiple arms and faces, similar to the depiction of several Hindu deities. Brahma, in particular, is the Hindu god of creation and knowledge, who's closely associated with the lotus. These gods' many arms symbolize the timeless and all-powerful nature of Hindu deities, as well as their ability to exist in multiple dimensions across time and space. The Collective's many arms likewise show that their powers extend beyond any limitation the physical realm could try to impose. Finally, the mandala imagery in this scene represents the interconnectivity of all things, including all that this hive mind aims to consume. Before the big boss battle, Rick outfits Morty with a nanomesh suit that blows up like a personal airbag if he gets into any trouble. Apparently, the suit recycles oxygen internally so that Morty can breathe in any atmosphere while wearing it, and it also absorbs liquid so that he can pee in the suit like a surgeon wearing a diaper during an 8-hour angioplasty. The fight scene between Evil Morty, Rick, and the Collective is absolutely one of the best action sequences the animators of this show have ever given us. Not only is this fight scene smooth as hell, it borrows a ton of inspiration from superhero knockouts and anime battles, which is why it looks so rad. If you know a Rick and Morty fan in your life who fell off watching the show because they think it dipped in quality, show them this scene to reel them back in. It really feels like this is the kind of action that fans have been begging for over the last 4 years of seasons that some fans consider mid. I really hope that the rest of the season follows suit, mostly because I'm extremely broke and I need people to watch these videos so that I can afford dental insurance. But also because I've been craving action like this, and we finally got it. During this scene, an alternate musical version of the Rick and Morty theme song, Dimensional Infrastructure, plays. In the end, Rick and Evil Morty use the Collective's power to assimilate technology against itself, thanks to a nifty compression algorithm. In tech, compression algorithms are used to reduce the file size data takes up. Often, this can include merging redundant data, which is why we see the Collective's limbs fusing together. Rick's algorithm is so effective that it compresses all the data and technology of a multiverse-spanning hive mind empire into a single nifty little memory stick. A nifty little memory stick that Evil Morty pockets, which means that we might actually see this guy's powers return in a future episode. At Diny's Diner, a parody of Denny's, which also canonically exists in the multiverse, Morty is bummed out to learn that Evil Morty takes his grandpa on epic adventures like this all the time, and that they've been sneaking around saving the universe together for a while. I can definitely see why this encounter triggered Morty's fear of being abandoned by Rick. The last time they went to an actual Denny's together, Morty lived several lifetimes inside the bathroom fear hole, where it was ultimately revealed that his greatest fear is losing linking Rick to someone else, like the memory of Diane, or Evil Morty in this case. Now he's feeling FOMO all over again, this time in a cheap knockoff restaurant without any mind-altering gimmicks. Unlike the time he spent vying for Rick's attention inside the fear hole, Morty's worried that Rick might actually be trading him in for a cooler model IRL, which is probably way scarier to him than any imaginary high-stakes bathroom heist. Speaking of bathrooms, Rick says he's going to one and comes back happy as a clam, claiming he took a dump that changed his brain chemistry. This is clearly a cover-up, as Rick is in good spirits because he took the bathroom opportunity as his chance to break into Evil Morty's lair to trash the place and graffiti upside-down elephants everywhere. Yet another hostage scenario foiled by someone needing to use the restroom. When Evil Morty returns home post-milkshake, he finds the Omega device completely destroyed, and the hostage family gone from his lair. It turns out that Rick uploaded the Omega device's blueprints to the Omega device, forcing the invention to wipe itself out of every corner of the multiverse. It's actually very similar to how he beat the Collective. It was lights out the instant that they absorbed the compression programming, just like what happened to the Omega device when it swallowed its own blueprints. On the way back home, Rick explains to Morty that he was only playing along with Evil Morty's adventures so that he could eventually destroy the Omega device, freeing the family from his blackmail. Eventually, Evil Morty got so confident in his ability to control Rick that he got a little too big for his britches and let his guard down, allowing Rick to make his move. He knew that it would only be a matter of time before Evil Morty started sucking his own eggplant about how cool and powerful he'd become. And he was absolutely right. Despite Evil Morty's genius, he's still a Morty, and Rick C137 is probably the guy who understands Morty's the most out of anyone else in the multiverse. Both Morty's reactions and behaviors in this episode are fascinating to me, especially because, like I said up top, we didn't really expect this from Evil Morty. Our Morty has been insecure about Rick's feelings towards him since season 1 of the show, and is constantly seeking reassurance that Rick truly loves him, despite the way he's treated by his grandfather sometimes. These two have encountered countless scenarios in which Morty literally has had to beg and act out in order to get Rick to show him real affection. Rick even traded spending time with Morty to spend time with two crows at one point. No matter how many times Rick lets Morty down or acts like he doesn't care about him, we all know that Morty is Rick's little buddy. Sometimes those feelings are just shoved way up his butthole. Although Morty is clearly a lot less intelligent and coordinated than Rick, he still brings him on all of his adventures because he genuinely likes spending time with him. And while Rick definitely respects Summer and Beth on a much higher level due to their smarts, it's Morty that Rick wants to show the universe to, at least 80% of the time. I guess I'm just surprised by Evil Morty's 180 because he had us all convinced that he was completely different from every other Morty in the multiverse. He's accomplished things that no Morty ever has, including gaining the begrudging respect of Citadel citizens, rivaling Rick's inventions, and living alone on the other side of the central finite curve, where millions of dangerous and unknown aliens attack his oasis every day. His entire life's mission has been to escape the infinite variations of himself and his family, because he sees himself as being out of their league intelligence-wise. But it turns out that the grass is always greener on the other side, even for genius supervillains. Morty barely spent 2 seasons alone before reconfiguring his blackmail scheme against Rick. He's now insisting that Rick spend time with him, and has clearly been showing off in order to impress him. I definitely think that Rick C137 is the first Rick that he's ever respected, or desired attention from. Maybe that's because our Rick is the Rickest Rick, a variant that Rick claims is the most Rick in the entire galaxy. Maybe Evil Morty was trying out a Goldilocks thing, and C137 is finally the Rick that clicked with him. Rick's indifference and disdain towards him in the aftermath of Unmort Rickon seems to have only fueled Evil Morty even further to find a way to get Rick to like him. You always want what you can't have. This proves that no Morty is an island. Every Morty needs a Rick, and every Rick needs a Morty for them both to achieve their apex. For a long time, it seemed like Rick Prime and Evil Morty were the only true outliers in the game. But it turns out that all Ricks and Mortys share some of the same basic intrinsic drives and functions across all their multiversal counterparts. Even the most evil, depraved, isolated Morty in the galaxy still just wants to be loved by his grandpa at the end of the day. When they return home, Rick portals the entire Smith house to a bunker dimension that he created specifically to hide from Evil Morty. If this is permanent, that'll make this the 3rd home dimension we've followed the duo to. To christen the address change, we even got Rick rambling about being in the bunker dimension forever, a callback to his pilot rant. Rick goes over a tutorial with the family about their new lives in the bunker, including key ways to stop an attack from Evil Morty. On his detective board, you can spot a brief history of Evil Morty, including the blueprints for his eye patch, his modified portal gun, and the escape pod used in Season 5's Rick Murray Jack. There are photos of Evil Rick with Evil Morty, their dome from Season 1's Close Rick Counter of the Rick kind, and one of Evil Morty running for president from Season 3's Ricklantis Mix-Up. As part of his briefing, Rick mentions that Evil Morty has Akira palm lasers. This is a reference to the devastating lasers featured in the godfather of anime, Akira. Those lasers were never used like Iron Man repulsors, so Rick is referring to their sheer destructive force here. He introduces them to Bunker Gene while they munch down on bunker burgers, but it's unclear if Gene was created inside this new dimension or if he was a Marine soldier pulled in from another reality. You can tell he's a Marine from the "Oorah" and the "Semper Fi" that he says. Both are catchphrases from the military, and the latter is a short form of the phrase Semper Fidelis, which means always faithful. When Evil Morty drills through Rick's dimensional infrastructure, he brings along his robot butler from Season 7's Unmort Rickon. He also has cool-ass tech that allows him to teleport and phase so quickly that it almost looks like he's a hologram. Somehow, despite all of the insane ways that Evil Morty manages to seriously maim him, Rick has already planned ahead for all of his possible tricks, and continues to regenerate. When Evil Morty firebends the liquid lava into a ball around Rick, Rick emerges as a full-on T-800 robot from Terminator. The part where he slices Rick's forehead open to remove his brain would have been kinda horrifying, but thankfully the crew inserted a bunch of Hanna-Barbera sound effects to lighten the whole dismemberment mood. After getting into a slap battle with Morty, Evil Morty is captured in a pocket dimension net by Rick. Back in Season 7, when Evil Morty appeared during Rick's attempts to hunt down Rick Prime, Morty asked Rick if he should grab the net, and Rick confirms that he should. Apparently, they've been planning to use this weapon-filled net to trap and kill Evil Morty for quite some time now, but unfortunately, they don't succeed.
Evil Morty! Should I grab the net?
Yes! Hang tight, Morty's getting the net.
Inside the Smith house, Beth, Summer, and Jerry do their best to attack Evil Morty during the 20-second refractory period after he fires his Akira palm lasers. But oh no! Evil Morty managed to invent a time-freezing device similar to the one that Rick used to stop time when he and the kids cleaned up after the giant rager they threw at the end of Season 1. He clearly hasn't been watching the show like the rest of us, though. As he wonders aloud why Rick doesn't do more time travel stuff, he learns the hard way that the time cops are one of the main reasons. We met Schleemy Pants, voiced by Keegan-Michael Key, and the other time cops in Season 2's Rickland Time episode, when Rick, Summer, and Morty accidentally destabilized their realities. It was def a genius move for Rick to call them, because time cops are immortal and omniscient, aka they can't be killed, and they can see every time crime committed in the multiverse. I absolutely love how Rick was playing 4D chess and leading Evil Morty down a path of self-destruction. All the adventures Evil Morty taunted Morty about going on with Rick earlier in the episode were traps waiting to be sprung. Like the Collective, Evil Morty was bound to steal and replicate Rick's tech without truly understanding the risks and limitations. All Rick had to do was wait for Evil Morty's hubris to catch up with him and take him off the board. Evil Morty is carted off to the fourth dimension's time prison, where, to his delight, he learns that the time cops aren't gonna do any fancy timey-wimey bullshit to keep him locked up. Instead of freezing him in stasis or removing his consciousness, the time cops want Evil Morty to face the physical consequences of his actions in jail. I think there's a 200% chance that those cells won't be strong enough to keep an evil man down for long, and that Evil Morty will have no trouble busting out of time prison to enact his revenge on the grandpa whose affection he longs for. Honestly, this might have been the worst spot to put him in the long run, because if he still has a hold of the Collective's screaming thumb drive, he could absorb technology from all across time and space, including the full arsenal of the time cops. Shit, man, if he can find a way to recode the Collective to answer to him, he could have a full army of time cops and dimensional supercriminals at his disposal. That's more power than even the Omega device has. While this might sound like the Storylord's wet dream, Evil Morty having access to unfettered time travel is also the perfect opportunity for one last emotional arc where Diane can be utilized. Not a fear hole illusion, not a memory fragment, but the real Diane herself. A chance for Rick to face true closure. I don't think it's a coincidence that this episode is directed by the same guy who will be directing the recently announced Rick and Morty movie. It feels like the perfect seed to set up a big event. Rick's newest nemesis is being put into place for abusing the tech and story devices Rick actively abhors. This sounds like the makings of a story that can riff off of blockbusters like Endgame, while also snidely deconstructing them in classic meta Rick and Morty fashion. Also, while we're talking about the movie news, Jacob Hare also directed classic heartfelt episodes like The Old Man in the Seat and Vat of Acid, so I have faith that it'll be more than just a mindless spectacle. For our last Easter egg, Rick takes a sip from his flask and laments that the show has an indefinite number of seasons left. Obviously, this is a running gag where Rick calls out how long the series will run for. But if you've lost track, currently this show has an official order for 12 seasons, the upcoming President Curtis show, and now a movie. Personally though, I'm expecting Warner Brothers to run the show Simpsons style, so that it outlives all of us no matter how often it moans wubble-ubba-dub-dub. These are all the Easter eggs and details that I could find in There's Something About Morty, but I want to hear what you guys think in the comments. Like and subscribe to WhitneyVision and follow us to stay tuned for more Rick and Morty breakdowns, including a backlog of videos from last season.